As you guys may or may not know, a couple of months ago we did our official announcement of our Patreon, which of course is patreon.com/RedGamingTech. There is a pinned comment in the, comments of our old video. If you missed the announcement and want to know more about our Patreon, do give that a watch, or just head on over to our Patreon page. It will explain everything you need to know. But this is one of the rewards for the $15 tier, folks. As a big thank you for being so generous, but thank you to everyone who has donated. Even $1 really does help, and it's a big part of why we can do what we do the way that we do it. So it's a big thank you to Alfresco, who did submit his idea, or her, I'm obviously not sure, last month. And it is, as you'll probably tell by the title, a discussion of some of the games that have disappeared after being revealed at E3. Now, E3 2017 was a little while ago now, but it's still firmly set the hype train on course with this holiday, and of course early next year we'll be seeing a lot of highly anticipated releases, plus some new ones come out. But over the last few years there have been several games that were given the usual pomp and grandeur of an E3 reveal to never be seen again. So let's take a look at some of the games that have disappeared into the ether, and of course the sordid tales that go along with their disappearance. The first one is probably one of the first ones that have jumped into your mind when I said the topic, and it is of course Silent Hills. E3 2015 was where we first saw the teaser for this game, and it was probably one of the many games, for me at least, that made that year's conference an absolute stormer. For me personally, this one is particularly bitter. For many years, Silent Hill as a franchise was in the hands of people who just did not know what they were doing. We got games like The Dreadful Homecoming and the so-so Shattered Memories. Even Downpour, which was one of the better ones, lacked the true flavour of what I love about the original Silent Hill trilogy. So that short teaser really set my imagination alight, especially knowing that Guillermo del Toro was involved. I couldn't wait to see what weird and wonderful creatures he would make, perfect for the song of that iconic Silent Hill siren. Things continued to look promising with PT, a playable teaser, which gave us a cruel snapshot of what of course is never going to be. It was obtuse and seemingly full of arbitrary flags, but it still had a ton of promise, and it was fairly clear this was not what the full game was going to be like. What mattered is it had genuine atmosphere and also captured really nicely that surreality that Silent Hill had at its peak. Sadly, as we all now know, Konami seemingly had a collective brain aneurysm as the project was cancelled and the lead developer, Hideo Kojima, lambasted out of the company, with them seemingly happy just to be that one company that makes pachinko machines and horrible decisions. This was the death knell of not only this game, but this franchise as a whole. I think that's what makes this one so bitter for me, is I love Silent Hill, and to see it die this way is pretty painful. And the next one might not be as heartbreaking as Silent Hills, but it's still a pretty bitter disappointment, especially for Xbox One owners, as it of course is none other than Scalebound. Now this one was also due out on the PC, obviously. It was still going to be a pretty big title for those who gamed solely or even primarily on their Xbox One. It also had a ton of promise because A, it was being made by Platinum, and B, it had dragons. The thought of a cool DMC style spectacle fighter with dragons made by Platinum was enough to catch my interest at least. We saw a little gameplay at Gamescom later that year, and things looked promising but pretty rusty, with some low frame rate and other issues, but that was pinned on the game still being in development. But things began to look even more stormy for the development of this game as it became clear there was a bit of an impasse between what the developers wanted to make and what the publisher wanted. We got a significant slice of gameplay from it again at a following E3, and unfortunately it had a heavy focus on the co-op, and the combats continued to look slow and sluggish, which was not helped once again by the poor performance on display. Of course, this game had numerous delays, and it was eventually delayed until 2017, but it was of course this year that saw the eventual cancellation of this game. Soon after, we learned of the constant development problems and the rumours of a developer-publisher disagreements, which were one of the things that ultimately spelled the end for Platinum's Scalebound. The next one is Star Wars 1313. Now this one might see a kind of resurrection in the form of Amy Hennig's as yet unseen third-person Star Wars project, but since we have seen very little of the game, it's hard to say how much of 1313's spirit lives on in it. There are obviously a couple of other Star Wars things in the works, but I think it's safe to say that the gritty, more down-to-earth 1313 has long since died. The premise was a simple one, but one that I think held a ton of promise and appealed to a lot of people. Instead of opting for the usual Force Unleashed choice of fighting as a Force user, complete with the lightsaber, we had a prospect of exploring more of Boba Fett's use in the depths of Coruscant. This set imaginations alight with the thought of exploring the darker underbelly of the Star Wars world, as well as learning more about the series one of the series rather, more favoured non-Force user characters. But this project is most likely deader than dead, as of course LucasArts was shut down and EA was given the reins on the Star Wars game licenses. So far, we have only had one disappointment and an upcoming and hopefully improved sequel to that. In all likelihood, the best we can hope for is that some of his assets have been put to good use. The next one is a bit of a weird one, as it is Prey 2. This year, of course, we saw the release of Prey, the reboot of the franchise by the solid developer Arcane. But the Prey 2 that we saw those years ago, that of course is gone forever. Prey 2 was stuck in what can pretty safely be defined as the absolute epitome of development hell, with Bethesda circa 2012 fighting off the constant rumours that the game had been cancelled, as of course it basically disappeared from our news screens after having a very promising showing. It said things like the game does not meet our quality standards when asked about why we hadn't seen anything from the game and has it been cancelled. But the development by Studio Human Head had pretty much come to a halt. Eventually, after languishing in the land of games that time forgot, probably keeping company alongside The Last Guardian at the time, the project was once again in the news. Sadly, this time, it was news that the project had been taken away from Human Head and once again disappeared into obscurity, as both Obsidian and Arcane reportedly had a tussle with the project. Obviously, it was eventually cancelled. What we got this year is undeniably a great game, but it was Prey in name only. So for those who wanted a true sequel to Prey, this wasn't it. It shows basically no similarity at all to the previous game, meaning that the game that showed so much promise back in 2012 is probably languishing on a hard drive somewhere, never to be seen. Our final offering doesn't really have the wistful nostalgia of, oh, what could have been, as in all honesty, the whole idea of this was a bit weird and seemed to go down like a lead balloon. It is, of course, Fable Legends, and not only that, it seems like the idea that no one wanted also brought down one of the industry's longest running companies. Now, the basic idea behind Legends wasn't actually all that bad. It was a fairly rare breed at the time, the asymmetric multiplayer game. Obviously, it's much more common now with Dead by Daylight and the Friday the 13th game, and of course games like Evolve and other such things. But no one wanted that from a Fable game. We all wanted Fable 4. Everyone was like, where's Fable 4? And when this was revealed, to a bit of like, what? Reaction from people, we kind of learned, hey, this game is stopping Fable 4 from being made. It didn't really go down well. It was a purely online game, and the developers later described the project as something nobody wanted to work on. There were several delays, as well as a leak of several details which did not paint the game in a promising light, and following a closed testing period, the game was cancelled just before it was due to go into open beta. Weirdly enough, the game was apparently nearly finished when Microsoft pulled the plug, so they put already millions of dollars and many working hours into this project, but pulled it just before it was going to be available for public consumption. Considering again that Lionhead later revealed that Legends stopped them from working on Fable 4, the whole thing just felt like a slap in the face. But I think this thing would have less of a stink about it if, of course, the events that followed the cancellation of Legends, the fact that Lionhead was being shuttered after 20 long years in the gaming industry. So, basically, in short, an expensive project that nobody wanted is probably one of the biggest catalysts in one of the most venerated studios closing down. GG, Microsoft. GG. To be honest, I could be here all day naming the games that we just haven't seen hide nor hear of. Honourable mentions go to The Last Guardian, because while it is now out, it did disappear for several years and took over 10 years to come out. And to be honest, prior to Sony revealing it at E3 a couple of years ago, going, hey guys, remember this? I had written the project off as never coming out, and I think a lot of people did as well. And Final Fantasy 15, kind of just flailed about in development for years. Many people thought that was never going to come out because delays upon delays and renaming it from Final Fantasy 13 Versus, blah 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 blah. Plus stuff like StarCraft 2 Ghost and a bunch of other stuff that will never see the light of day. More recent things like Phantom Dust, which apparently is still happening but not as we saw it a few years ago at E3. There is unfortunately a far too long a list of games that don't ever really appear or appear as we originally saw them after E3, so there's too many for me to go through them all, but I feel like these are some of the more recent painful ones. Obviously it's skewed by my preferences as a gamer, Silent Hills is probably the worst one here for me because I love that series, and to see it die in such a pitiful way is just like, why? Why does such a great series have to belong to Konami? Just, you know, why? Give it away, you don't want it. You can still make Pachinko, okay? But seriously, thank you to everyone who has supported our Patreon. It is highly appreciated. And of course, even if you don't donate, that's absolutely fine. Even just by watching, liking, subscribing, sharing, all that stuff, you do make this possible. So thank you very much to everyone who supported us. But of course, this video is a big thank you to our $15 patrons. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed, and I will be emailing the $15 patrons again for the suggestion box suggestions for what's probably going to be this month's / early next month's video. And yeah, thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.